The First World War impacted many aspects of culture and society, in particular the growth of war journalism and reporting. Within the British government, media censorship was a growing concern. Early on, David Lloyd George, the eventual Prime Minister, recognized the importance of garnering support for the approaching war from the London newspapers, to assure support from the British citizens as well as the ability to manipulate morale. He persuaded several reporters and newspapers to back the government. The War Minister, Lord Kitchener, was very anti-war reporting on the Western Front, out of fear of losing public support. He employed several journalists to write government-backed war reports, even threatening and blackmailing some correspondents who reported without the government's express permission. This practice was finally ended when Theodore Roosevelt warned the British government that preventing war journalism was harming Britain's cause in the United States. This censorship became a major issue throughout the 20th century as journalists and war correspondents fought for the right to report on the truth. Censorship was just as bad in Australia, where journalists were almost totally silenced by censored military and press organizations. This hold on journalism combined with cultural ideas regarding masculinity and nationalism. There was virtually no representation of the soldiers' and war journalists' psychological trauma. Both soldiers and correspondents were expected to man up, and issues such as PTSD were not mentioned at all. Australian reporting was different from other reporting, as very few Australian journalists were accredited. All the reporting was pooled. Their press was censored by both the British and their own Australian government, and the press was required to submit all communications to Australian field centres, as well as to British and American forces. This dual censorship did not occur in any other countries during either World War. World War I was a crucial moment in mental health care, and it especially influenced journalists' mental health as correspondents worked to receive the help and recognition they deserved. U.S. journalism during World War I created a unique type of wartime propaganda, as U.S. foreign policy shifted from isolationism to interventionism. Newspapers played a huge role in changing the American people's perspective on war. When the U.S. entered the war in 1917, they were confident that they would force Germany to surrender. However, soon it became clear that this would not be the case. The Espionage Act of June 15, 1917, brought about new censorship laws and an increase in propaganda promoting the war. The focus in newspapers shifted from the dehumanization of German soldiers to the promotion of American soldiers, especially promoting those registering for the draft. The shift in American views on war was incredibly rapid. As the U.S. joined the war, public opinion swung radically to the opposite side, displaying the new hold that journalism held upon the public, which would continue on into the 20th century. The First World War is largely responsible for the development of aerial photography, which grew more and more popular as the war progressed, to the extent that by the end of the war, in November 1918, almost 6 million aerial prints had been made on the Western Front alone. Few examples of aerial photography from the early period of the war remain, as it was less popular and more crudely created. However, developments in aerial reconnaissance were being used early on, with soldiers verbally reporting on troop movements and positions. While balloons and airships have been used in war since the 1860s, World War I was the first opportunity for the new aircraft to be used in war. Later in the war, cameras were mounted on the planes. As time went on, aerial photography became more available to the public, with pictures being printed in newspapers, shown in film halls, and used as propaganda. War reporting changed greatly as a result of the new ability to photograph wars from a relatively more safe position. This new art of aerial photography would become more polished throughout the 20th century and be used more and more by war correspondents.